June 12, 2024, the world woke to a sea of red on financial tickers. Panic from Tokyo to New York. Headlines blared. Trump slams India and China with America First tariffs. Global trade on brink of collapse. This wasn't a routine dispute. It was a seismic shift, threatening to upend the global economic order. Stock markets in Mumbai and Shanghai crashed, erasing billions before breakfast. In Washington, President Trump declared a new era for American workers, vowing to end unfair trade. But for world leaders, it sounded like the start of a war no one could win. In New Delhi, shock and betrayal. Indian officials, blindsided, scrambled for answers as factory owners voiced fear. Livelihoods built on U.S. trade were suddenly at risk. In Beijing, the response was cold and strategic. State media condemned the move, but leaders saw opportunity. For the first time, China and India faced the same threat, and a chance to unite. The U.S. had hoped to isolate its rivals. Instead, it pushed two giants closer, setting the stage for a global realignment. The world was holding its breath. Trump's tariffs were sweeping, 40% on Chinese goods, 25% on India's key exports. No industry was spared. Electronics, textiles, pharmaceuticals, IT services, all targeted. The message opened markets only on America's terms. Trump claimed he was protecting American jobs from predatory practices, citing old grievances with China and new ones with India. To his base, he was a hero. To the world, it was economic brinkmanship. The fallout was immediate. U.S. companies reliant on Asian imports saw costs soar. Retailers warned of higher prices for everything from smartphones to clothing. Critics called it a tax on Americans, predicting inflation and slowdown. The global supply chain, built over decades, was thrown into chaos overnight. For China and India, the tariffs threatened years of progress and millions of jobs. Their export-driven models suddenly looked dangerously exposed. Both nations faced a stark choice: adapt fast or risk economic crisis. The race for a new strategy had begun. In India, the pain was swift and deep. Textile hubs like Tirupur fell silent as U.S. orders vanished. Thousands lost jobs overnight. The pharmaceutical sector, once a global supplier, saw revenues collapse as tariffs priced out Indian generics. IT contracts dried up and diamond polishers in Surat were laid off en masse. The shock rippled through the economy. Factories shuttered, local markets slowed, and the government scrambled for answers. Emergency loans and promises of new markets offered little comfort. No single country could replace the scale of U.S. demand. Indian officials worked around the clock, but solutions were elusive. The nation faced a moment of vulnerability that demanded a total rethink of its economic and foreign policy. The crisis was no longer just economic. It was social, political, and existential. India's rise was suddenly in jeopardy. The world watched as the country searched for a way out. The stakes had never been higher. As India struggled, a discreet message arrived from Beijing. We face the same storm, let's weather it together. Decades of rivalry were set aside as China proposed a secret summit. Desperation overcame distrust. India sent a trusted delegation to Beijing. In a secure guest house, talks were frank. China offered more than a trade deal, a deep economic partnership. Chinese firms would absorb Indian goods shut out by the U.S. India would open to Chinese tech and investment. The vision was bold: two Asian giants integrating their economies, building resilience against Western shocks. For India, it was risky but necessary. Dependence on the U.S. had become a liability. The Chinese negotiators spoke of an Asian century, led by cooperation, not competition. After days of negotiation, India returned home with the blueprint for a deal that could change everything. The outlines were clear mutual benefit, shared destiny, and a new balance of power. The world's attention shifted east as old rivals became unexpected partners. The stage was set for a historic realignment. The global chessboard was about to be redrawn. The West had underestimated the power of necessity. Now, China and India were ready to act. The Sino-Indian Strategic Economic Partnership stunned the world. The goal, $1 trillion in bilateral trade within 5 years, backed by sweeping tariff cuts and investment pledges. China slashed tariffs on Indian textiles, pharmaceuticals, and IT services. Lifelines for India's battered industries. Chinese manufacturers would buy Indian cotton and components. Indian pharma gained access to China's vast market. Beijing pledged billions for Indian infrastructure, ports, railways, 5G, creating jobs and modernizing the economy. For China, it meant new resources, a vast market, and a wedge in America's Asia strategy. The partnership fractured the US-led coalition, shifting the center of gravity to Asia. The deal was hailed as a new Asian Silk Road, a revival of ancient trade routes, now turbocharged for the 21st century. For the first time, China and India were building a self-sustaining economic bloc. The trillion-dollar handshake was more than trade. It was a declaration of a new world order. The future would be decided in Beijing and New Delhi, not Washington. The earthquake had begun. The China-India pact shook the foundations of the post-war global order. For 70 years, the US dollar, navy, and consumer market anchored the world economy. Now, two rising powers were rewriting the rules. Global supply chains shifted. Asian goods, once destined for the West, now flowed between China and India. A new self-contained economic loop emerged, less vulnerable to US pressure. American companies found themselves sidelined as Asian firms traded directly, setting new standards and networks. The US was no longer the undisputed center, it was just one player among many. Political alliances frayed. India, once a key US partner, now hedged its bets. The dream of a united front against China was dead. The world was becoming multipolar, with new centers of power and shifting alliances. The American-led order looked shakier than ever. The sands of global power were moving east. The era of US dominance was fading. Washington's reaction was swift and furious. Trump accused India of betrayal, threatened harsher tariffs, and called the deal a Beijing conspiracy. Emergency briefings painted the pact as a threat to the international system. Congress rushed out new laws to punish companies joining the Sino-Indian supply chain. The US aimed to use its financial muscle to sabotage the Asian bloc. Intelligence agencies warned of Chinese espionage via new infrastructure projects. The State Department pressured allies to shun the deal, drawing a new line in the sand. But the harder the US pushed, the closer China and India became. American threats only reinforced their resolve to build an alternative system. The US fury, meant to reassert control, was backfiring. The world was watching a new order take shape, one less beholden to Washington. The more America fumed, the more determined its rivals became. The old playbook no longer worked. The trade war forced India to rethink its foreign policy. Reliance on a single power was now seen as a fatal flaw. India embraced multi-alignment, building diverse partnerships worldwide. The China deal was crucial but not exclusive. India signed new trade pacts with the EU, deepened ties with Japan, Australia, ASEAN, and revived cooperation with Russia. The goal, a web of relationships for stability and leverage. India was no longer a junior partner, but a central node in a multipolar world. Diplomats championed reforms at the UN and sought new markets in Africa and Latin America. The shift was pragmatic, not anti-American. India was charting its own course. The US attempt to force India's hand had backfired, catalyzing its rise as an independent global player. The world was now a network, not a hierarchy. India was ready for the 21st century. The most radical move? Challenging the supremacy of the US dollar. China and India agreed to trade in their own currencies, bypassing the dollar and the SWIFT system. This new payment system created a financial architecture outside American control. It was the first credible alternative backed by two economic giants. The partnership extended to technology, joint development of 5G, AI, and cloud platforms, independent of Silicon Valley. The digital Silk Road aimed to serve billions and offer developing nations a new model. This was globalization on new terms, less hierarchical, more inclusive. The China-India deal wasn't just about goods, it was about building the infrastructure for a new world order. The center of gravity was shifting. The future would no longer be written in dollars alone.